All right. Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Learning Tech Talks, where we are actually taking a break from learning technology and focusing on our existing business technology to get the questions you need answered to navigate this whole coronavirus situation. So today I'm joined by Jordan Fladell from mLevel, and we're going to dig into some strategies and resources that will help you stay connected and not only survive the situation, but thrive in it. For those of you joining, be sure to give us a like, share the post, tag in somebody who'd benefit from the conversation. We'll be watching the live comments, so feel free to chime into the conversation. We'll be watching. And before we get started, today's question is a little more relevant, a little less silly. But Jordan, for you, I'm just curious. How has the current pandemic situation affected your day-to-day? What is like the biggest thing that's changed for you on a day-to-day?
Yeah, well, I mean, on a personal level, I think the interaction with me and my teenagers has changed a lot over the last couple of days. Try to explain to them what's going on, and also keeping the focus on their schoolwork. I think that was the first thing this morning, waking them up when they were off school and getting them to get focused on getting their homework done, and then giving them an exercise routine while also doing my job. So it was a grand marshalling event, I like to call it, where there's a lot of emotion in the room. But that was the first personal side that really took me for a loop this morning.
Okay.
Right. And then the second thing that I think was it was just an odd experience, is at work, we find ourselves in the office being able to walk around and move freely to do that. And I think today was a challenge getting unhinged from my desk. Okay. So I had to put on my schedule a reminder with white space to walk outside for 15 to 20 minutes and then come back in. And I think that was the unusual part the first day in, just reminding myself that it's okay to get up. It's okay to step away from the desk. It's, because in the office you have that camaraderie and you don't have that here. And so, I think that was a big first step for me to understand that being healthy is going to be an important part of this journey.
Okay. All right. So is today the first day you're like home?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Friday I had a medical appointment, so I took a work from home day, but do that. We at mLevel have kind of been working from home in a very restricted, I would call it restricted way, saying, look, there was always a number of people allowed in the office at one given time. If you had to come in, you had to notify us. But we started probably Wednesday when the president spoke. We went formal. And then, but for me, it was really the first day of being at home 100% without having something to go do. Like I had a medical pre-op appointment that on Friday was still clear. So I had to go take care of that.
Okay. Got it. Well, I have to say my answer to that question is honestly, not much has really changed for me.
Right. Well, you work at home.
I kind of look around once in a while and go, did something happen that I didn't know about? Because it's very much my normal day to day. But I know there are a lot of people I talk to who are really scrambling to figure some of this stuff out because this has been tossed on them. This wasn't their normal day to day, and now they're being expected to do that, which can be a little unnerving. But having done this for quite some time, I think the exciting part about this is it is navigatable, right? While it can be unnerving and uncomfortable, it is navigatable, and that's what we want to talk about today. Is the fact that there are a fair amount of tools in our portfolio that we can go. And I'm just curious, as you talk about things, what are you seeing? What are some of the things you're seeing with your own teams, but maybe also, customers and things like that? What are you hearing from folks?
Yeah. So let's just start with what we're doing internally. I think it's a good practice. I don't know if you can do this at scale with very large organizations. You probably have to break it out departments and groups. But we're holding, end of day call for everybody to stay connected at 4:00. We just literally hung up when I came on with you, which everybody's got to get on video. Everybody's got to get on the screen. They got to talk about what they accomplished for the day. They get to share great stories from maybe a personal perspective. And you're using, Zoom and Teams to kind of do these functions and Slack together to make it all happen. So that's one thing I think that's crucially important, is that you create regular connection points for your team. And I think you have to be disciplined with that. You have to do that. You have to turn on the video. You can't let somebody hide behind them having a bad hair day. I didn't wear a great shirt today. I'm not feeling great, whatever that is. You have that connection. And the other thing we did was we kind of asked all of our team leaders to hold regular status calls with their team. So we're a small company again, but even that, I kind of said, okay, if you're our CTO, meet with your dev team and your daily stand-up, do it all in video, but then have checkpoints middle of the day, as much as to ensure that you're getting your work done, but it's also to create that connection, right? What you don't want someone to feel is feel disconnected. The moment they feel disconnected, they start to feel alone. When they start to feel alone, they start to feel that, this unbelievable burden that they're all on this island together. So I think that's a big important part that you have to do. And I think, from a client perspective, I think, most of the big companies are still wandering in the valley of, I don't know how to do this. I'm sure Microsoft and Google and Salesforce and others who live in technology, Zoom, I hope, has figured this out. I mean, obviously,
they have.
Zoom,
I know a good chunk of people over there. They've embraced it, right?
Right.
They've really embraced it.
But for somebody who works at an organization that doesn't do this daily, like an accounting firm or a financial services firm, they have to go home and figure out how to do their jobs and how to have tough conversations and how to use this technology, which is daunting.
Yeah.
It's daunting to somebody who's never been on a Zoom call because they've had everything face to face to figure out how to use Zoom and not hit mute. I think there's still an unknown here. I think people are going to get to that state, but I think for the most part, I haven't heard great stories yet of perfect remote success. I've heard more people frustrated over their company's lack of preparation than I thought I would hear, given we're in 2020 and not in 1999 or 1990.
Well, and the thing that's interesting about that is, I'm actually talking about this later this week on Thursday, that some of it is the tech, but some of it really is more than just the tech. And even one of the things you just hit on before is the intentionality behind communication and collaboration. I think one of the things that is so easy to take advantage of or just not notice when you are in the office is, hey, connecting and collaborating with the people you work with. You don't necessarily have to think about it. You don't have to plan for it. It just happens. And when you're in this remote environment where that isn't happening organically, like you said, you have to be intentional about making time to do it, making sure that you are having those meetings, those intentional points to communicate with each other. Because if you don't, it'll just disappear. I mean, it's very easy to lose sight of that. So I think it's a fair point, and that's great to hear. That's what you're doing there. And I think anybody who's not doing that now, that's probably one of the biggest shifts, is to say, let's be intentional about this, or people don't feel like they're in an island, because the social isolation is real. I mean, it very much can happen if you're not careful.
Well, Chris, think about it this way. So you and I are privileged, right? We're privileged in a sense that we work in organizations that allow us to have the flexibility to use the technology. We're also privileged in a sense that we both have families surrounding us, right? So your social isolation is a joke that I saw on the internet about, sports not being there and people realizing that their wife was right next to them on the couch the entire time. But we're fortunate that you're going to see your child at the end of the day. You're going to have a chance to see your wife. You're going to have some interaction, right? But now you have someone who's, a single person, right? Not even a single parent, just a single person, and they're now alone, and no one's going to socially connect with them, and they rely on the office to be that social connection, right? And so, if you're not being intentional with communication, if you're not reaching out to that individual, if you're not making sure that you're staying connected as a team, they're going to feel alone, and the only source they're going to have of news is bad news, right? Because that's what we're in tune for. I mean, there's no sugarcoating this. This will get worse before it gets better. Especially the longer we take to actually be socially distant from an outside perspective, that will be the challenge we all have in front of us, right? Yeah. So I think your intention part is very important to this. And, I encourage any leader listening to this, or for that matter, any person leading to this, that they call their leader up tomorrow and they say, look, I heard this, and we need to have a regular team call, even if it's in the morning, afternoon, whatever. And the other thing I'd say is intentionalness of taking those walks. I just left everybody on my team call. You got to get up. You got to get outside before you know it. Look, everyone loves Netflix and everyone loves to watch movies and play video games, but don't find yourself so locked in that you get so dark and gray, because the light's important, and it's also healthy. So,
well, and I think this is where there's a fair amount of things we can unpack on. We talked about the intentionality. I think the other thing is these tools exist today. I think we don't always realize how many tools are in our hands right now. That I even think of LinkedIn, right? You think about where we're broadcasting now to LinkedIn, how so often we just use it as a place to put another version of our resume. But I can speak from personal experience. There's so much more that you can do with that. There's so much more you can do to connect with people, and then use the tools at hand to not feel like you're on your own. Now, granted, you're going to have to get comfortable doing it a little bit differently than maybe you have historically, but the ability to do it and the effectiveness of it, I can say from personal experience, it's there. You just have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, so you can use LinkedIn, or let's just start with a tool that I think almost, I hate this. I'm not panning everybody in the G Suite world, but I am going to say that the majority of people
All right, we'll allow it. We'll allow it.
are running in the Office 365 environment, right? So this product from Microsoft is known as Outlook. It's known as Word. It's known as Teams, which is part of that suite. It's known as SharePoint. You've got all these tools, OneNote, and inside these tools, you have this opportunity to use this @ feature, where you can start to connect with people, right, via @ and it will automatically pop and give them notification. So if you want to collaborate with someone on an effort, you don't need to go through this massive endeavor. You can put a note, hey, @ so-and-so, I'd love for you to collaborate on this. And then when they are part of that OneNote, you see you're directly talking to them and you can connect with them on individual. Or if it's an Outlook meeting where you're sending an email and you're in the email, if you want someone to be aware, all you have to do is type the @ in the email and it'll pop up in the actual email chain to connect that person to that email string, right? It's little tiny tricks like this that someone in the organization, especially there's no better place in the organization than the L&D department to take this burden on to communicate out all the ways to use the tips and tricks, not the power user application. I want to be clear that you and I were just talking about this before we got going. If you are trying to boil the ocean, you are going to fail, right? Right. Especially so I hate to use this term. This is a crisis. And in a crisis, you need to take action with thought, but you need to have action that is quick to help people solve problems. So if you want people to collaborate using Office 365, figure out how to use all the collaboration features to connect and then send out messaging around that, helpful tool tips, whatever communication you want to use to get people going. But you can't boil the ocean. You can't overthink this. You got to get going. You got to use the tools. You got to lead from your desk.
Well, I think in learning and development, we're in a unique space to lead by example, right? Because we can do that and we can show people how to model this and we're equipped to help them understand how to do it. You know, it's funny you bring up the @ symbol in Outlook. I actually found that by accident. And again, it's one of those things where I'd seen it. I'd received emails where I was tagged in and was like, why is this different? But I'm on a Mac and it rolled to Mac version later, of course, but now it's there and I use it all the time. I personally, love that component of it.
Because it saves you while you're typing the email. So you're typing like @ Christopher, whatever, blah, blah, all of a sudden it pops up, you're there, you've got that. And now that person's connected in your string, right? So it's an easy tool, just one example of an easy tool to connect and collaborate, which is really what you're trying to accomplish here. You're trying to work together and you're trying to keep people connected during this time period.
Well, and Slack, right? Slack collaboration tools, whether it's Yammer. I mean, I think there's lots of them out there, but I use Slack now. I have, the L&D community that I host for folks now is in Slack. And what I find interesting about it is depending on how you structure it, Slack really can be the water cooler of your digital organization. It can be the place where you go have organic conversations and you just, are able to ping questions, ask questions, things like that. I use it all the time, not only just within organizations, but across organizations. I think that's one of the things that's extremely powerful about this tech is it expands our reach.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of a couple channels that we use inside the Slack environment. Again, the Teams environment, things like FOMO.
Yep.
So you have a FOMO channel, right? What goes on the FOMO channel? When people do stuff that people think they should see or whatever, they'll do it. We have a corporate channel, which is kind of like this overall messaging platform. Like today, we use it to say, hey, if you're not going to be at your desk and you just don't tell us you're setting it away. I'm going on a walk, I'm having lunch, whatever it is, put your stuff there. Build a channel that's all about fun stuff. Today, we have, I'm sure we'll have a dog channel by the end of the day. We're only, a small company, but there were so many dogs in the call that were going on. We learned about in Zoom the flexible backgrounds today.
Oh, yeah, no, those are fun. Yep.
Right. But that gives people the ability to have personality. So when I asked what everybody had been today, one guy took the opportunity to put a forest behind him. And I was like, oh, you just went outside to the forest. Yeah, I'm old. These things confuse me. So I was like, oh, you went out to the forest. He's like, no, I just used the Zoom background feature, right? So you don't have to open up a Zoom session necessarily to connect. Slack has video, right? So if you can do a call right from Slack or right from Teams or right from a lot of these collaborative applications that are like that. And I love your point. Build channels that build the water cooler. Call it a water cooler channel.
Yep.
Invite the people you normally or call. Like I have a lunch group that I have lunch with at 11:30. I think tomorrow we're going to create a lunch group that we can all sit on and go video and pretend we're eating lunch together, right? Because wouldn't that be cool that you could use the technology
I've even done virtual happy hours. I mean, I've actually hosted virtual happy hours with remote folks where it's just like, hey, let's just get together and just hang out. Like, let's just hang out and talk. And connect with one another, because I think that's one of the things that we risk if we don't pay attention to that. that is what can lead social distancing to start feeling like social isolation, where you're not connecting and having that organic conversation and feeling like you're connecting with others that you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I said this in a lot of my posts. I don't think there's more important time than now to invest in employees
Yep.
from a company's perspective, right? I think we often joke about, hey, we got to upskill people, we got to, we got to invest in our company, we got to have great culture. This is the test of great companies
Yep.
and great people, because today is when you have to invest into it. If you're not investing and communicating with your team, when things return to normal, they will remember that. And when things return to normal and they feel comfortable, they will go other places. So as much as you may be sitting there going, hey, I'm worried about this investment, I'm worried about what it costs, the time, I got to think about the right strategy. I'd argue that there's no more important time than that connection right now, because people are going, we're going to overcome this. This is not a movie. This is real life, and we are going to, as a nation, as a world, which you can already start to see people getting together to work hard to solve this problem. We're going to overcome this. We'll come out the other side. It'll be different. Sure, things will be different. Maybe industries will change a bit. Maybe our viewpoint on things will change for hopefully a longer time period than shorter, with the lessons we learn. But when those employees will remember, hey, these people just had me work and they never once reached out to me. They didn't have a collaborative group. They never had video calls. I don't want to work at this company anymore. They talk culture, but they don't act culture.
Yep.
Right. And you got to put your money where your mouth is, as my mom used to say.
Well, and again, it's about leading by example. And to me, there's tons of tech that we could sit and unpack, which sometimes can feel overwhelming for people, right? Because it's like, well, do we use Slack? Do we use Teams? Do we use Yammer? Do we use Chatter? And there's lots of them out there. I think some of it is. And we talked about this right before we came live, that it's now is a perfect time to experiment with some of these things, because guess what? Some of them are going to click and some of them aren't. And that's okay. You're going to try certain ones and go, yeah, no, that didn't really work in my world. I know that, there have been a few that I've tried that it just didn't jive with the dynamic or the culture of the team. And so we moved on, and now is a perfect time to experiment with that and see what you can find,
especially with what you own, right? I mean, start by hitting that little start button. If you're using a PC on a Mac, it's probably in your menu somewhere,
right?
And
how many apps? Okay, if I were to do an inventory, how many apps do you think are actually on our computers? Or I think of Office 365. How many people have gone up into the top left corner and clicked that little 9 block to see how many apps are there? There's a ton of them that you may not even realize are part of the suite, because you've just gone out to SharePoint or you've jumped to Teams and you didn't realize you had, Microsoft To Do. You didn't realize you had all these other apps that can actually help you feel more connected. Microsoft Stream. I think of Stream for being able to pass, lighthearted videos and share with one another and tag people in and create that. And that doesn't make the IT security people freak out, because, hey, it's in our environment. We can let people play around a little bit and not worry that they're going out, posting things to YouTube, but you can share video internally.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest part, is like explore your own desktop, explore your own environment, ask the question of what apps do we have available before you turn around and say, we need new stuff to accomplish this goal, right? Because the new stuff's going to be really hard to get through the pipe. Just to be transparent.
We don't have time. That's, more than anything, when you think about it, we don't have 6 months to evaluate technology and implement things like that. And actually, in some regards, I think this can help us on that digital transformation journey, because why not play with the tools and the apps that we have now and identify, hey, are there really gaps? Do we have gaps in our ecosystem? Or maybe we don't. We just didn't realize the tools we had.
I may piss off a lot of our audience, but this isn't a time to worry about your change management plan. This is really a time to just go take action and see what happens.
Yep.
And I think people appreciate it. They may get a little frustrated, but I always say you got to walk. You just got to start. You got to start somewhere. And spending a lot of time in think tanks and private rooms without communicating is what people get nervous, right? Yeah. We're already nervous. And you think about the mindset of everybody who's watching the news. Hopefully, people are watching the news and whatever news source they get, but they got to be on edge. And the longer it's quiet, the more they feel on edge in general.
Well, and I think that's where some of the vulnerability, we need to bring that to light and be okay being vulnerable and recognizing, people are nervous. People are nervous. They're uncomfortable. This is something we haven't experienced probably for many of us in our lifetime. right? We've not gone through something like this, and that's unnerving. And we have to be respectful and thoughtful about that, and staying connected to one another to support one another through it. What one of the things that I think is interesting about we talked about it before, and we've hit on it a little bit, is the need to be a little more comfortable with being uncomfortable and maybe breaking out of the corporate mold that maybe we're used to. You're wearing a hockey jersey. I don't think I'm ever in anything that dressy, so this isn't really that unique for me. But I think back to organizations where I've joined, and when first was there, the whole video conferencing was very uncomfortable for people. The example you used, and this is just kind of a best practice that I've used in organizations, where it was, well, I'm not camera ready, or I'm not feeling the best right now. I can tell you multiple times where, to lead by example, I intentionally didn't shave, I dressed down, and I would go on camera all the time. And it was, even if you didn't turn it on, I would do it so that you felt comfortable, and then kind of razz people a little bit to bring them in, not in a bad way, but to make them know it's okay. Like, I get you're at home. I get you're in a hockey jersey, Jordan. That's totally fine. And we can kind of be a little more natural to ourselves as we go through this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool. I mean, like today, like I said, I learned about people's dogs. I got to see people's bedrooms. I mean, from my perspective, I thought it was really neat to connect with people on a different level, to be vulnerable, that people are willing to have that connection. And I think it's really important when you talk about human connection in general, right? We're missing this. We're going to be missing for a while, undetermined amount of time, human connection. So why not use this video technology that we have available in the tools we already own, all of them supported that we know of that are for collaboration, and go and force it. I mean, look, no one's winning a beauty prize right now.
Right.
No one's being judged for that. As a matter of fact, people are looking to connect. Like I said, I think the neatest thing was we had a whole series of people showing off their dogs today.
Yep.
Cool, great. I don't have a dog, so I volunteered to go to my teenagers and come sit in there, but I felt like it was a different story. But the reality is, I think that's part of the journey is first that veil of I'm going to be vulnerable.
Yep.
I'm not worried about what I don't have to care what the person thinks about me. The person just wants to connect with me.
Yep.
Right. So, you and I've done this enough to where I know what's behind the window. Right. So I know what's behind.
There's cars there.
Sometimes there's snow. Sometimes we get an Amazon package. Right. I feel like I've kind of been part of the Christopher Lynn journey, and it's a personal connection we only have because of video. If I didn't have video, I wouldn't know those things. I'm in my basement now in my room, and used to be.
I haven't seen this side of you, Jordan. To be fair,
it's a whole side of me. Like you're getting, and I wear my hockey jersey today as much as my VP of marketing is probably screaming at the top of her lungs. How dare you wear the hockey jersey on the thing? But I felt like it was representative. It was my third jersey for an adult hockey team that I had to stop playing because my black stuff. But I wanted to wear it today, and I'm willing to be exposed for it. I'm a natural person, and it's okay to be your natural self, because that's what people want right now. People want that off the cuff.
They need the authenticity. And I think sometimes we're nervous about doing that because we're afraid, right? We're afraid of what will happen. And what I've seen over the years is, if anything, that draws people in, right? They feel like they know you better. And I love it. I see LinkedIn now. I see pictures of people that, they're posting pictures of them doing this, and their kids are in the background. They're dressed in goofy outfits. I mean, great. Have fun with it. Make the most of the situation that we're in. And I think that's just some real practical advice to folks, is not to be afraid of it, but to take some risk and try it out. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Oh, I agree.
So what other stuff too? So let's think about some of these. Because one of the ones that we talked about, right, Teams, Slacks, things like this. One opportunity area that I see continuing to grow from a tech standpoint, with which this to me is a perfect incubator to try some of these things, is, I think for a long time I've heard people talk about, hey, we really need to have virtual solutions, or we need to do better at doing virtual delivery or designing digital content for stuff. And there really hasn't been something that's maybe kicked us off the cliff to say, well, let's move it from we should do that to we have to do that. So are you seeing, obviously mLevel's a digital content platform, but are you seeing other trends happening with people trying to embrace some of this technology to take development to people where they are now?
So first of all, let me shout out to almost everybody in the learning community who we interact with. I'm super impressed with all the other vendors, partners that are stepping up. I mean, forgetting what we're doing for a second, I learned LinkedIn Learning just launched 19 different courses that are available for free that you can get in the area. So I do see the shift from the content providers. A good majority of them are gone rapid to get content out to their clients or to the community to help them. I don't know that it's happening internally in the corporate world as fast. And I think that's more of the fear that's been injected in the processes that are in place to make things go from start to finish. So Chris, I think your point is you're rapid. I argue a lot with people about the fact that when things are digital, you have this opportunity to be wrong and then pivot quickly and fix it. It's not a piece of print. If you don't boil the ocean, again, one of our points we brought up, but if you don't build a 72-page PowerPoint deck or a 3-hour-long video to train somebody, you have this opportunity to pivot quickly and fix it, right? And I think I'm not seeing it yet in the corporate environment. I haven't seen this big push. We are actively working day by day to not be perfect, but to be thoughtful, and then to be quick to deliver content. To deliver a plan of action, because we realize that look, we work with a lot of large companies. I mean, you know this coming from the large company world. There are just certain procedures you guys put in place to protect yourselves from yourself. It's called the CYA event, right? Everybody's got to sign and check off. Okay, I'm not talking about the character from Star Trek, by the way. This is the actual check off that's going through, right? And if you think about that concept. So it's a CYA event. So how do we streamline the CYA event, but also how do we support it by saying, okay, look, I'll use the example of, let's say all of a sudden I'm a retailer, right, under a tremendous amount of pressure, and now I have to move my training on how we're going to treat customers in light of COVID-19 to virtual versus in presence. And my managers nor my associates have ever used whatever, Teams, Slack, Zoom, WebEx, G Suite, Google Hangout, Blue Jeans, Yammer,
whatever. There's no shortage of them, right?
Right. There's no shortage of tools that some company owns. But remember, the person on the other side of the equation probably never interacted in their entire lives with a web chat that wasn't coming from a FaceTime or whatever Google's answer, Android's answer is on an Android device. I just don't know it. And they're intimidated by the moment they click on the button. So how do you quickly build content that before they ever launch, here's the 6 things you need to know to get it out there? Well, if you have this long, arduous review process, you're not going to survive that process. They're going to click on, they're going to be frustrated, you're going to miss the mark. You may talk to them because that's going to be your natural reaction. I think a lot of companies are going to get on Zoom or get on these chat, whatever feed, whatever video conferencing solutions are, and they're going to assume it's like doing instructor-led training. They're just going to start talking.
Well, so that one right there, right? If we just focused on the virtual side, right. To the things I've done over the years and worked with my teams to do over the years, I think one of the biggest things that we can avoid as we do this is to just lift and shift what we've done before and say, okay, well, if we were doing instructor-led anything, right? We had our slides and, we went through those slides, because I think what happens is what we've been talking about this whole time is the need for people to feel like they're collaborating. And the second you bring those PowerPoint slides and it hijacks 90% of the real estate, you've lost it. Like you've lost the community and the collaboration between that. And I know that sometimes that can feel very terrifying to people to be like, but how do we do a virtual training without slides? It's actually easier, I think. Send them out ahead of time. Send that stuff out ahead of time on a collaboration tool like a G Suite, something like that, so that people can interact with it. But then just have the live time together to talk through it, because I've seen that move things forward so much faster than, all right, hey, we had this classroom training, now we're going to offer it virtually. But to make it interactive, we're going to drop a poll in there. Like, not going to be enough.
So I will tell you the best way to do that is watch the news. So if you don't know how to facilitate or to make content interactive, watch the weather person. Watch, maybe not today's news when you go on like whatever channel, it's a little, but thinking about slides as a backdrop and not the delivery vehicle for the content itself. Right. I love setting out ahead of time, but I also think about it this way. Like the weather person does a great job of having a map in front of them with a bunch of pictures on it that have sunny, there's a cloud, there's something, but that's not how they tell the weather. They don't point and click, well, this is on this slide over here. You'll see that this front's going over here. They talk to you broadcasters talk to you. So Chris, here's what I know. For you and I, it's not difficult because we like to talk. We're not intimidated by the camera. And for us, it's a natural event, right? So a lot of people, it's not natural. So I think what I would say is for you and I, if we were to give us that, we wouldn't even send a PowerPoint. We just start talking to people. Like, words,
exactly what I do. But
right. Yes. Did you remember what we said? Words. Remember? Yay, words.
But the thing is, okay, but think about this. And it's a good point, right? That's fair. Because I think the easy solution could be to say, I'll just send them out ahead and do the collaboration. And not everybody's comfortable with this. Yeah. I think a simple tip, honestly, and this is a good step, and we try and do it with Learning Tech Talks when we do this. How many people, once the slide goes up, take it down before the call ends, right? Like, how often does that slide go up and they're there for the duration of the call versus let's put it up. Let's maybe talk about it to the slide a little bit, like you said, right? Good best practice, talk to the slide so people, and then take it down for a bit to facilitate some of that discussion so that it doesn't become a death by PowerPoint.
Or make it interactive where you say, okay, I just did this. Somebody else volunteer. We need a volunteer to go out and raise your hand to be first to come out and do what I just did with the same function. So if we were using this Teams example or Zoom, so, okay, whatever it is, I'm going to show you how to do this on Office 365. I'm going to show you how to put the @ in the Outlook and make it work. Okay, somebody show me do that, right? You got to find a way to get the audience engaged. You've got to get some form of video. You got to get something going that's just different. Because if you spray them, if you just talk at them, they're gone. This is the generation where there's instant messaging, phones, all these things going on. You'll lose them faster than you ever lost them in a classroom. So I think it's really important that you work hard to find interactivity. That's part of what our message is. Yeah. Virtual instructor-led training does not have to be you talking at someone. It should be completely interactive, and you should force it.
You should. And I think there's tools that allow you to do even more. And I think sometimes this is where people get overwhelmed. As I think of, Adobe Connect, Zoom can do it. A lot of them can do it, the breakouts, right? In theory, that sounds really good. We'll do breakouts and people can do that. In execution, if you are not familiar with these tools and you're not comfortable doing that, that can nuke a virtual initiative right there. Because it's a lot more coordination and planning and execution than you can. And going back to your point earlier, which is we need to move more agile. We can't do the whole ADDIE process before we do anything. Sometimes we just need to say, you know what, here's a problem that we need to solve. Let's pull people together. We've got some content we want to construct and get through with people, but let's just do it. Let's get them together. Let's talk through it and let's collaborate with one another and not worry about, well, what if it doesn't go perfect? Right. It probably won't. It probably won't. It might actually not go well the first time, and you'll learn from that.
We got to start somewhere, right? Bring the instructor. If you have people who've been doing ILT there and delivering the instruction, but they haven't been designers of the content, bring them together and say, okay, you have 6 hours to collaborate, 2 hours to collaborate. What are you pulling together? You're the expert on speaking. You're the expert on designing. You two to get together. You build something. 3 slides. You get 3 slides. I'm making a number up. Whatever. It's arbitrary because it's just easy to pick a number. Right, you get no more than 10 slides. That's a new rule because you say that's it. So it's 1 slide for every 10 minutes. If it's an hour long, if you have a half-hour session, you get whatever that is. That's
right. I mean, right, whatever it is, but set a rule, set a limit, and say this is it, and the rest we're going to design around it.
Force your hand, because otherwise you're just like I said, because it's the key to stay video connected. I think that's the key here is what we're really helping at a face-to-face. Collaboration as much as possible is important, and then using the tools you have, I think, is really going to be the challenge that most companies struggle with because most people haven't spent the time, like you said. I mean, like, how many people have gone to that left nav thing? Everybody's guilty of it because we haven't been forced to do it, right? Now we have this opportunity to be forced, and we get to learn by it, right? As learning professionals, we get the opportunity to learn to do things differently. We will advance our skills now to be more valuable in the future as this world evolves from this opportunity, right? It's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity.
Well, but it also to some degree has created a good opportunity to do some of this experimentation stuff because there's a lot of chaos going on. So the expectation isn't that it's perfect, right? I think sometimes expectations are set that, well, we have to make sure it's perfect because X, Y, Z is expecting it to be perfect. Right now, everybody's kind of running around with their hair on fire and anything.
Well, not ours, but that's okay.
Well, ours isn't, and that's great. That's one of the safety features that I've built into this haircut. But I think that's the part where you look at it and you say, now is a good time to experiment because the acceptance of failure is probably going to be a lot higher than under normal circumstances, because people accept it like, hey, this is an unprecedented time. There is a lot going on. Anybody who's trying new things and willing to experiment is going to be ahead of the people who are waiting to try and get it perfect. And I think that's, the other thing you brought up that I think is an important one is the face-to-face piece. I mean, for years, I've always been an advocate that yes, and I think sometimes people get this mixed up, that I am a stark advocate that face-to-face communication is critical. I think what we're finding and what I've seen for a long time is that how we define what face-to-face communication is changing. We've never met, but I feel like we could run into each other on the street and it really wouldn't be any different than if we hadn't.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a model for this, and I'll just pull it out because I like props. So this device that our children have been walking around with, and people of the digital generation have taught us that the ability to have personal connection without seeing each other is unbelievably there, right? My father-in-law was here yesterday for dinner. We were not breaking our social distancing rule. We were just making sure he got fed. We talked about how we need to move our calls to FaceTime.
Yep.
Why? Well, because now you're not going to see us as often because we don't want you to get out of the house as much. Oh, well, how do I do that? Well, I showed him and he went through it. And so that's now the challenge we have with us internally, right? So instead of normally you take a call, do it with FaceTime.
Yep.
Or do it with whatever, light up your one-on-one call. If you're using Slack or Teams, both of them give you the ability to call someone from the direct chat you're having. Call them, right? Call them and do the face-to-face interaction. I think it's part of the process we're sitting in front of, right? We're the leaders for it. Maybe it'll be marketing and communications who will rise up and take this challenge, but I think they have bigger fish to fry. They're going to be focused more on how do we communicate with our customers, how do we communicate with our partners, how do we communicate with the channel to continue to bring revenue in. We're part of the HR organization in most companies, right? That means we're part of the human resources group. We're part of taking care of people, and we are the content experts. Yeah. Right? The talent team's not going to come in and tell us how to recruit better, right? This isn't recruiting. This is retention. This is communication to our employees. It's education. And it's not just education on how to use product, Chris. It's education on how to work differently today, right? So you and I were talking earlier about the work from home content we're working on, right? We're not experts in work from home. So we're borrowing experts' content, right? There's so many people publishing. It's overwhelming. Which article do you read? So we're going to put together some content, right? We're working a partnership with a renowned therapist who teaches cognitive therapy. So with the goal of helping our customers, employees understand how the right mindset during this crisis, how to mentally deal with this, because there's a lot of mental aspects to this. Forgetting all the people that are prone to depression, prone to isolation, who are now going to be amplified with all the news. I mean, it's a different time for content. It's got to be thoughtful. But you can't wait 3 weeks to deliver out content and have it change your mental state, because by that point, 3 weeks into it's too late. Building. Right. So what can you get out by the end of the week? What can you get out by early next week? How can you preview to somebody, hey, we're here for you. We're coming. By next week, you're going to have some content that's going to be all about, we've invited a guest speaker in. It doesn't have to be you doing training. We can go there's plenty of experts out there on the web. Just go to LinkedIn, like you said, and look for whatever expert. They'll gladly come talk because they're not on the road.
Right.
They're not traveling. There's all these people who do motivational speaking. They're not, all their events are canceled. So they're home too.
Their calendar is wide open.
Call any one of them, I'm sure they'll gladly get on and talk to people so they don't lose their mojo with it. Right. Like we're talking to another guy who does motivational speaking. I know everybody's hurting in this channel. Right. Think differently, think outside the box, do creative stuff. Right. Don't be bound by, as you call it, the ADDIE model, the processes that are internal, right?
And we don't have to. And I think, we talked a little bit about virtual and some tips for how you can do that well. I mean, I think, Vikram brought up a point too. There's tools. This is a time to explore what's in your virtual collaboration tools. How many people have ever tried the whiteboard feature? Right? Like how many people have realized that you can draw on your slides and how simple even that can be? And granted, you might look, your drawing might be terrible because you're trying to draw on a mouse pad, but even simple things like that where you can do it. And I think your point about digital content as well, it's a great time to experiment with quick, fast content. And again, we can use this as a learning opportunity to see, hey, we might find some stuff really resonates with our learners and our employees that we would have never tried before because, we were so caught up in our processes and things like that.
Well, I mean, we should stop arguing about what font to use. And sorry, I mean, I don't know how else to be direct, but I went to an event, my last event that I got to attend before I was in non-travel lockdown mode, and I met with a lot of directors of learning at the Chief Learning Officer Exchange in Austin, and I asked a question. I asked really weird questions. Chris, you've gotten to know me for a while. I'm not one that, I didn't grow up in learning, so I don't tend to ask learning questions. And and as much as I say, I'm not always focused on making the sale. I'm almost like focused on a learning experience, right? Let's tell me what's going on. That's why I asked this question. Well, how much time do you guys spend arguing about fonts? And I can't tell you, I have about 15 meetings, 13 people, leaders that spend a lot of time arguing about fonts.
Yep.
I got to be honest with you. Fonts don't matter right now. They just don't matter. Right? Don't worry about the font. Don't worry about, did I pick the perfect graphic? Oh, I don't know. Okay.
Probably not. And like you said, the beauty with digital content is if you find out it's the wrong font or the wrong thing, you can change it, right? You can change it. It's fast to edit. And I think of some of these cloud tools where you can push a button and flip this content out and move forward with it. And we don't need to get caught up and not to and the thing is, to my designer friends, to the designer folks out there, that doesn't mean that attention to detail is not important, because it is, but it is that balancing act of, okay, we have to look at what's going on right now. And right now with a lot of this stuff, the ability to act quickly and strategically is critical. We can't get tripped up in our own selves in some ways with some of these details, that it's not that they don't matter. It's that we need to move faster, and we can think about how we'll tackle those things later.
Oh, I totally agree. As much as I mean, the fonts.
What's that? The font? Although Jordan doesn't care about fonts. Everything is wingdings when Jordan has PowerPoint.
People who are listening in Atlanta who are doing this all remote, who are chuckling in the marketing department, knowing that I've had this, I'm probably the worst at it. I argue all the time about, well, just change it. It's a web page, for God's sakes. If I'm wrong today, change it tomorrow. Well, what will the brand be if somebody says, so I am pretty adamant on that, but I'll get off my soapbox on fonts.
Yeah. Well, and I think, some of the biggest things that I think anybody can take away from it is the fact that, one, you probably have more tools than you realize, and now is a really good time to figure that out, and be willing to take some risks with them. I think it's cool to see. You mentioned it earlier. To me, one of the things that's really cool to see is how this really is bringing a lot of people together, right? People are working together to solve big problems. They're helping each other out, and if you need help, people reach out. Like, now's the time to do it. I think there's so much opportunity right now to network, collaborate, and do things differently, and be okay with doing it differently, because everybody's doing it differently. You're not even going to be like the odd one out trying to do this stuff, because guess what? So is everyone.
Well, I mean, look, Elliot Massey has this great thing going on right now. He's run a community. He stood up about how to deal with the crisis, right? I mentioned the LinkedIn Learning folks have got an offering together. I've seen another couple of learning companies. I think I saw Allen Communications put together a SWAT team to support stuff, that I always talk about. Our friends at Exonify reached out to the frontline workforce with a positive message, it's not a time to sit back and say, well, you're alone, right? We're going to build a whole site around a whole landing page around here to help. Right. And that content's available for everybody. Is it going to have some stuff about how to use our tool? Of course it is, because that's who we're helping our customers. That's our job, right? But we're going to put some generic stuff up there too. It's collaborate, ask questions, post a question, use the tools, go to Twitter, go to LinkedIn, go to Facebook. I'm old, so I use all those ancient tools. If you're modern, use things like Instagram,
TikTok video. You don't know anything about social media, try out TikTok.
Well, that's the funniest thing. The other day I was watching, actually today, the AT&T folks who are in the retail stores arming and protecting, trying to make sure everybody who needs communication now can get it until they close the retail stores for everybody. But they did a TikTok on how they were cleaning the store. It was awesome. I don't think they did plan that a bit, because they had coordinated moves, which was pretty impressive for a bunch of folks who really made these moves and went public with them, which I don't know if they had a chance to sign off on that or not, but it was amazing to see, right? It's creativity, it's ingenuity, it's connection. Go watch what this work from home, like go on Twitter and search work from home, and you'll see these crazy videos of people who are just entertaining themselves, or watch the natural things that are going on in Italy and Spain, where people are singing from the rooftops, and doing fitness classes on the roof. I think I saw a fitness class on the roof that someone was teaching on their rooftop so everyone
Yeah,
could see their house.
the creativity that's coming
Right.
out is,
Right.
I think sometimes stress and pressure creates some of that. I mean, I know it was a while back, but I remember with one organization we were pressed for something, and so we experimented with Twitter chat. Right, we just said let's do a Twitter chat to see how it resonates with our learners, and it exploded. Like it just exploded. They love the dynamic interaction between it, and it was just something we tried out because we thought, hey, why not see if we can leverage some of these readily available tools that are in the hands of our users and capitalize on it. And right now, in many cases, we have a captive audience. We have a captive audience that, as Hannah mentioned, now is a time they have to learn. And so, we can help capitalize on building that learning culture, if you want to use buzzwords.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it. This is the opportunity for to try new things, but also to innovate and be creative. I mean, I can't remember the exact time period, but I'm pretty sure Facebook and Google came about right after 9/11. When the world was relatively shut down, and these people were not able to go places, and they had to innovate and think and do things differently. I mean, you never know what's going to come about, right? You never know what ideas are going to be there. Try. But you have a very receptive audience. People are thirsty for that connection, right? The person who, let's just take a salesperson who works for your company that spent their entire life on the road, right? So, you used to work in pharma, right? You had a stint in pharma, right? So all your pharma reps, where are they at? They're constantly going door to door with doctor to doctor. Now they're being pulled off the road. They've been home for the first time in God knows how long. They're kind of walking around going, okay, well, how do I do my job now?
What do I do?
What do I do?
What do I do?
Right. It doesn't change the pressure, right? They have to figure out how to use the phone, email to now interact with a person who may not be receptive. And what do I do? How do I use the tools, that I didn't know how to use before? And I've never had a Zoom session. I've never had to do a sales call. What does that mean for me? My presentation skills. What do I'm used to having a conversation when I bring my big box into the doctor's office, drop it on and go, these are my drugs.
Right.
That's kind of terrible.
But even social learning, I think of this is a ripe environment for social learning to take off and be like, hey, user-generated content, do some experiments with user-generated content right now, because guess what? People are home. They're at home doing things. Have them share best practices, create some channels to say, use Microsoft Stream, use Yammer, post your best practice, initiative. And I think that's where, you don't want to say this is a good thing, because it's not. But I do think it's a catalyst for something that we can really take advantage of as an opportunity to help drive our organizations forward.
Well, if social enterprise is ever going to be successful at the scale it was supposed to be successful, this is the opportunity for that to be successful, right? I mean, the aspect of collaboration in social enterprise has been talked about for 20 years. And the reality is that 15% of the people in any organization adopt that technology and use it. Well, now there's an opportunity for 100%, 80%. They have to. This is the communication vehicle. I love that idea. I mean, literally, you should have a Zoom feed up or a chat, whatever technology you're using with a chat box in it saying, all right, I'm not perfect. Let's iterate. You have an idea, throw it in there, then I'll throw the camera to you, right? Because there's no foolish pride in saying, oh my God, you have a great idea. I'm going to go to, Jimmy in San Francisco who came out with this great idea in the chat feed. I'm going to let him talk about it. Let's riff on that.
Right. Let's bring him up.
Let's bring him up, right? Let's bring him on. Let's thank you for the idea, Jimmy, Jennifer, whoever it is that you want to talk to. Let's bring them into the conversation. There are no bad ideas in this place, right? Let's collaborate.
Yeah. No. So like I said, it's terrifying. I think we have to respect kind of the nervousness and the unknown that we're dealing with, but I think we can also look at it as a tremendous opportunity. And a lot of people are looking to us. We have an opportunity to shine in L&D to say, hey, we're going to lead by example. We're going to help bring this together. We're going to be strategic about it and make something that could be a colossal risk and detrimental to our organizations. And we're going to use it as an opportunity to drive us forward. And, the thing I think I'm excited about is, this has been awesome, Jordan, to catch up with you. I know we got to cut it a little bit short today, but we pulled this together, right? In the spirit of agility, we pulled this together. You messaged me yesterday about this, and we said, let's do it. Let's get this out there. Let's help people think about this. Let's give some tips. And on Thursday, I've got another show, and we're going to talk about the mindset piece and bringing this kind of improv mindset to do this, to be able to thrive in this. So
awesome.
This has been awesome. And I think it's great that mLevel, what you're doing to create some of this content for your customers to be able to navigate this.
Well, we appreciate it, and Chris, always appreciate you having us on. Glad you thought the idea was a good one. And obviously, like I said to you before, if people didn't get a chance to ask questions, so that we're always going to be watching those feeds. So ask any question you have. I'm sure either one of us would be glad to jump on in
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
respond.
for sure. Those of you who have been, I've been watching the feed, and I've threaded as many as I can in, but we'll be watching the chat afterwards. You know, Jordan and I are both collaborative, so you know how to get a hold of us, and we're happy to be there and continue to support you through it, because this is an unnerving time for a lot of us, and those who are a little bit maybe more comfortable with it are happy to help those who might be scrambling. So thanks for joining me. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for everything, and stay safe, stay distant, but don't stay isolated. I think that would be the takeaway.
That's awesome, Chris. You have a good one.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.